You know that feeling when you're driving home and suddenly you realize you have no memory of the last few miles? That's your brain on autopilot. It's super efficient, right? But in high-stakes environments, that exact same efficiency can become a serious hidden danger. We're not talking about being lazy or careless here. We're talking about a biological trap our own brains set for us. And today, we're going to dig into the science behind this silent killer, complacency.
And that brings us to a really stark warning from someone who's lived his life in a world where there's no room for error. Fighter and airline pilot Jeff Odie Spenship. He calls complacency the silent killer for a good reason. It doesn't show up with a big announcement. It just creeps in, usually when we feel the most comfortable, the most competent.
And that really is the million-dollar question we're unpacking, isn't it? How does a completely routine day, a pre-flight check you could do in your sleep, or a maintenance task that's pure muscle memory, how does that suddenly become the first link in a chain that leads to absolute catastrophe? Well, the answer is buried deep inside our own minds.
To see just how devastating this can be, let's start with a real-world case that really shook the aviation community. Let's talk about the catastrophe at Teterboro Airport. So picture this. It's 2005. The weather is clear. The crew is highly experienced. On paper, everything looks perfect. But during takeoff, something goes horribly wrong. They have to reject the takeoff, but it's too late. The plane overruns the runway. And when the investigators looked into it, they didn't find one single massive failure. They found something much quieter. A key contributor was simply complacency during routine pre-flight checks.
So, the crash at Teterboro gives us our prime suspect. Now it's time to formally identify it and to really get our heads around the incredible scale of the problem we're dealing with.
Let's be really clear about what we mean by complacency. This isn't just, being relaxed. It's a dangerous cocktail. You feel good about what you're doing, you're satisfied with your skills, but that very satisfaction has switched off your brain's internal alarm system. You've lost your awareness of the danger that might be hiding in that routine.
And if you think this is some minor edge case issue, just look at this number. A Boeing study looked at engine shutdowns related to maintenance, and they found that a staggering 94% were linked to complacency errors. Technicians just relying on memory instead of the manual, skipping that one final look. That's not a small problem. That is a massive systemic vulnerability.
But here's the kicker. This isn't just about attitude or professionalism. It's about neuroscience. To beat this enemy, we have to understand why our brains are actually hardwired to be complacent. So let's take a look at your brain on autopilot.
We can call this state human zombie mode. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's when you perform a task using just muscle memory or habit without any active conscious thought. Things like flying an approach or disarming a door. These are incredibly complex actions, but they can run almost entirely on your unconscious mind.
So why does our brain do this? It all comes down to energy. We've basically got two operating systems. There's the conscious mind, which is slow, deliberate, and a total energy hog. Then there's the unconscious mind. It's a supercomputer. It's fast, automatic, juggles tons of things at once, and it's incredibly energy efficient. So for a routine task, which mode do you think an efficiency-obsessed organ like the brain is going to prefer? Yep, it defaults to low-energy zombie mode every chance it gets.
I absolutely love this analogy because it nails the science. Neurological studies have shown that the brain starts preparing for a movement seconds before you're even consciously aware that you intend to move. So by the time you think to yourself, I'm going to flip this switch, your brain's already done all the legwork. Your conscious mind is just the PR agent, showing up late to take credit and explain what just happened.
Now, this autopilot system is great for saving energy, but it creates this really dangerous side effect, the illusion of completion. This is the gap that opens up between what we think we did and what actually happened.
Okay, let's head back to the flight deck. A pilot's doing their pre-landing flow, something they've done literally thousands of times. They reach for the speed brake lever to arm it.
And right there, that's the trigger. The second that thought pops up, the brain goes, "Oh, great, I know this program, time to save some energy," and bam, it switches over to the unconscious autopilot.
And here's where the gap appears. The pilot's hand moves the lever. The brain feels that movement. It's a sense called proprioception, and it immediately ticks the box, task done. But in reality, the lever didn't quite click into that locked arm position. The unconscious mind was happy with the motion, but the conscious mind never did its one job, that slow, deliberate check for the green-armed light.
And look, this is not just a pilot problem, not by a long shot. Let's jump over to a maintenance engineer doing a routine check.
And there it is again, the exact same trigger thought. Routine, I know this.
The brain immediately says, "Got it," and offloads the task to that super-efficient, unconscious system.
And the same dangerous pattern plays out. The engineer's hand secures the latches. It feels the resistance. The brain's feedback loop says, "Yep, that felt right, task complete," and their eyes are already scanning for the next job. But one latch is sitting flush without actually being engaged. The brain relied on the feel of the action instead of a slow, deliberate visual confirmation, and the result can be absolutely catastrophic.
Okay, so we know the problem is real, and we know it's literally rooted in our brain's obsession with being efficient. So how in the world do we fight our own biology? How do we wake the brain up when it really matters?
Well, we have to trick it. The brain's automatic loop runs on certainty. So to break that loop, we have to introduce a little artificial uncertainty. We do that by asking a simple question. What if? What if the winds are different this time? What if this one particular latch is sticky? That simple question triggers a powerful chemical in your brain, noradrenaline, that basically preps it for effort. It's like a biological alarm clock telling your brain, hey, wake up. This isn't routine anymore.
One of the most powerful ways to do this is to simply verbalize what you're doing. And here's why that works. Your unconscious brain sees the whole instrument panel as one big picture. It's processing in parallel. It's just checking if the pattern looks right. But your conscious brain reads things one by one. It's serial. So when you point at something and say out loud, "Speed brake armed," you are forcing your brain to switch from that fast pattern matching to slow, deliberate verification. You go from "it looks right" to confirming it is right.
Ultimately, fighting complacency isn't about trying to be perfect. It's about making a conscious choice, over and over and over again.
It all boils down to these two states of mind our brain can be in. The default state is wanting, that automatic, low-energy mode that just goes through the motions because it feels easy and familiar. But to be safe, we have to deliberately choose the path of willing, the active, high-energy state that requires focused effort. We literally have to will our brains to engage by creating a challenge and demanding proof. And this brings us right to the final and most personal question. In your own work, in your own routines, I want you to really think about this. When you go through a checklist, are you just responding check because your brain felt the motion? Or are you truly willing yourself to pause, to see, to verify before you say check? That tiny choice, that is the last line of defense against the silent killer.